My name is Harold Whitman, but everybody's called me Hal since I was a boy. I'm 71 years old, and 3 months ago, I was told I had roughly 6 weeks left to live. My children believed it completely, believed it enough to start selling everything I owned before I was even gone. What none of us knew yet was that the hospital had made a mistake that was about to save my life and expose exactly what my kids were willing to do the moment they thought I couldn't stop them. Before I get into this, hit subscribe if you're new here, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from tonight. I read every single one. Now let me walk you through what happened. I've lived in the same house in Boise, Idaho for 42 years. Raised both my kids there, my son, Brad, now 4-4, and my daughter, Cynthia, 4-1. My wife, Ruth, passed away 6 years ago, and since then it had just been me rattling around our house with all our furniture, all our photographs, 42 years of a life built one piece at a time. Last spring, I started losing weight I couldn't explain, feeling tired in a way that sleep didn't fix. My doctor sent me for scans, and then a biopsy, and about 10 days later I sat in an oncologist's office at St. Luke's here in Boise and was told I had pancreatic cancer, advanced stage, and that given how far it had progressed, I likely had somewhere between 4 and 8 weeks left. They recommended hospice care rather than aggressive treatment. Given my age and the stage they believed it was at, I won't pretend I took that news well. I called Brad and Cynthia that same evening, and both of them came over within the hour, and we sat in my living room and cried together in a way our family hadn't done since Ruth's funeral. I told them I wanted to spend whatever time I had left comfortable at home, not hooked up to machines in some hospital wing. Hospice care started within the week. A kind nurse named Patricia came by 3 times weekly to check on me. I want to be fair here. In the beginning, I think my kids' initial reaction came from genuine grief, not calculation. But grief is a way of curdling into something else when there's practical business attached to it. And about 2.5 weeks into my hospice care, I overheard something through the kitchen window that changed how I understood what was happening in my own home. I'd been napping on the back porch. Hospice patients sleep an unusual amount. Your body starts shutting down in ways that make you tired even sitting still. And I woke to the sound of Brad's voice coming from the kitchen, along with a voice I didn't recognize. Realistically, we're looking at maybe 6 to 8 weeks before we can list the house, the unfamiliar voice was saying. But there's no reason we can't start the estate sale process now, while it's still here. Furniture, antiques, that sort of thing typically sell better and faster when the family's proactive rather than waiting. I heard Brad's voice, quieter but clear enough. That makes sense. Honestly, the sooner the better. Cynthia and I both think Dad would want us to be practical about this instead of letting things just sit. I lay very still on that porch chair, my heart doing something strange and heavy in my chest, and I listened to my own son discuss selling my belongings, my life, 42 years of it, with a stranger, while I was still breathing 30 feet away. Over the following days, I watched it happen in pieces, too weak most of the time to do much besides observe from my recliner. A woman came through with a clipboard, tagging furniture with small stickers, Ruth's china cabinet, my father's old roll-top desk, even the dining room table where we'd had 40-some years of holiday dinners. Brad explained it to me gently each time I asked, always with the same reasoning. Dad, we just don't want you to have to worry about any of this. We're taking care of it so you don't have to think about logistics. You focus on resting. I want to tell you I confronted them right then. I didn't. Partly because I was simply too exhausted most days to fight much of anything, and partly, I think, because some small stubborn part of me still wanted to believe my children were doing this out of love rather than efficiency. I told myself, they think I'm dying. People make strange, hurried decisions around death. I'll let it go. Then, in the 5th week of my hospice care, something happened that changed everything. Patricia, my hospice nurse, came by for a routine check and noted that I seemed, if anything, slightly stronger than the week before, a small thing, but she flagged it, said it was unusual enough that she wanted my oncology team to take another look before we continued reducing my care plan. She pushed for an updated scan. I sat in that imaging room at St. Luke's 11 days later, too tired to feel much hope one way or the other, expecting confirmation of what we already knew. Instead, my oncologist, Dr. Ferris, came in with an expression I hadn't seen from him before. Careful, almost hesitant, the look of a man about to say something that didn't fit the story he'd already told me. Mr. Whitman, he said, I need to go over your file very carefully with you, because I think there's been an error, and I want to be completely transparent with you about what I'm finding. I sat up a little straighter in that chair. What kind of error, doctor? Your original biopsy, he said slowly, appears to have been processed alongside another patient's sample, a Harold Whitfield, not Whitman, admitted the same week. I've pulled both files. I believe there was a labeling mix-up in pathology. Your actual biopsy results show a tumor that is, while serious, both smaller and significantly more treatable than what we originally diagnosed. With surgery and a course of chemotherapy, your prognosis isn't 6 to 8 weeks, Mr. Whitman. It's more likely 6 to 8 years, possibly longer, with appropriate treatment. I sat in that room absolutely silent for what felt like a very long time, turning that sentence over and over, trying to make it make sense against everything I'd already accepted as fact, against the estate sale stickers on my dining room table, against the conversations I'd overheard through my own kitchen window, against 3 weeks of watching my life get sold out from under me by children who believed, with total sincerity, that I would never be around to notice. Doctor, I finally said, how soon can we start that treatment? I had surgery 8 days later, followed by the start of a chemotherapy plan Dr. Ferris was cautiously optimistic about. I didn't tell Brad or Cynthia about the misdiagnosis right away. I want to be honest with you about why. Part of me needed a few days just to sit with it myself, to let it settle, before I brought it into a conversation with the two people who'd spent the last 5 weeks preparing for my death in a very literal, very practical sense. And part of me, if I'm being completely truthful, wanted to see what else might happen to my house before I said anything at all. I stayed at a rehabilitation facility for the first 10 days after surgery, recovering under close medical supervision. During that time, I asked Patricia, my hospice nurse, who by then had become something closer to a friend, if she'd be willing to check on my house for me just to see how things stood. She came back with a phone full of photographs, and what she showed me confirmed what I'd feared. The estate sale had continued in my absence. Ruth's china cabinet, gone, sold for $400 according to a receipt Patricia found on the kitchen counter. My father's roll-top desk, gone. A box of Ruth's jewelry, including her wedding ring, which I'd specifically told Brad, months earlier, in an entirely different conversation, that I wanted kept for Cynthia someday. That box was nowhere to be found in the house at all. I called Cynthia myself 3 weeks after the corrected diagnosis, once I felt strong enough for the conversation. I didn't lead with anger. I asked her, simply, Cynthia, where's your mother's wedding ring? There was a long pause on the line. Dad, we didn't think you'd need it anymore. Brad said it made sense to include it in the sale, that jewelry always moves fast and gets good prices, and we needed the estate liquidated efficiently before. She stopped herself. Before I died, I finished for her. Go ahead and say it. Cynthia, before I died. She started crying on the phone, and for a moment, I almost let myself soften entirely, the way I always had with my children my whole life. But I made myself say what needed saying instead. I don't have 6 weeks left. Cynthia, the hospital made an error. My actual prognosis, with treatment, is years, possibly many years. I found this out 3 weeks ago, and I have spent every single day since then watching you and your brother finish selling my house. The silence on the other end of that call told me everything about how completely unprepared she was for that sentence. I moved back into my house 9 days later, weaker than I used to be but steady on my feet, walking through rooms that were, in places, unrecognizable. Half the furniture gone. Family photographs, I later learned, had been boxed up and donated along with miscellaneous household items, because nobody thought to check what was inside those boxes before they went out the door. Ruth's china cabinet, the one piece that hit me hardest, sold to a woman 2 towns over who Patricia eventually helped me track down through the estate sale company's records. I called that woman myself. Her name was Denise, and when I explained the situation, as calmly as I could manage, though my voice broke more than once during that call, she was horrified to learn the full story. She told me she'd give the cabinet back, no charge, the moment she understood what had actually happened. Not everyone I called was as generous. Some items were already resold, passed through 2 or 3 hands, impossible to trace. Ruth's wedding ring. Despite Denise's help and my own searching, I never did recover. I think about that ring more than I probably should, given everything else that came out of this. Brad came to see me about 2 weeks after I'd moved back in. He looked, for the first time in longer than I could remember, genuinely afraid of a conversation with his own father. Dad, I don't have an excuse, he said, sitting across from me at what remained of my dining room table, one of the few large pieces that, mercifully, hadn't sold before I got home. "We thought you were dying." I told myself I was being helpful, being practical, saving you and Cynthia from having to deal with an overwhelming mess later. But if I'm honest with myself, some of it was about moving fast before either of us had time to feel guilty about it. I'm ashamed of that. I appreciated that he didn't try to dress it up as something nobler than it was. I told him so. But I also told him, plainly, that appreciation for honesty and actual forgiveness were two different things, and I wasn't ready yet to hand him the second one. I want to tell you I fully worked things out with Brad and Cynthia. I haven't. Not entirely. Not yet. We talk. They both come by regularly now, and there's real effort in it, real attempt at making amends. Brad spent weeks personally tracking down as many sold items as he could find, paying out of his own pocket to buy several pieces back at whatever price the new owners wanted. No negotiating. He never did recover Ruth's ring, and I think that failure sits with him as heavily as it sits with me. What I did do, once I felt strong enough and clear-headed enough to make the decision properly, was sit down with a new attorney and restructure my estate plan entirely. Not to cut my children out. I'm not interested in that kind of bitterness. And I don't think it would honor Ruth's memory to build my remaining years around punishing the two people she loved most in this world. But I did set new terms. A living trust, with clear provisions that nothing in that house transfers to anyone, for any reason, while I am still alive and breathing in it, a condition I never imagined I'd need to spell out in writing for my own children, but apparently I did. I'm 8 months out from that corrected diagnosis now. My most recent scans came back clear. Dr. Ferris tells me, cautiously, that things are looking better than he initially hoped. I still sit at that dining room table most evenings, in a house with gaps on the walls where photographs used to hang, gaps I'm slowly filling back in, one recovered piece at a time. I think about Ruth a lot in that quiet house. I think she would have been heartbroken by what her children did, and I think, in a particular way, she also would have found a way to forgive them faster than I have. I'm working on getting there myself. I'm just not rushing it, the way everybody else in this story seems so eager to rush the ending of mine. If this story moved you, hit that like button, subscribe to Dad Law's Story if you haven't already, and let me know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from tonight? I read every single one. See you in the next story.